Welcome to Giant Ability TV.
One important thing that we need to ponder on, and with every sense of seriousness that it deserves, is the place of religion in our lives as humans. It is important to take stock and see if religion has to a great extent fulfilled its purpose in our lives as a people and in our country. Religion, as we understand it, cannot be divorced from morality and without any contradictions. We know that animals do not have religion. If going to heaven or making it there alone is the purpose for which we embrace one religion or the other, then it is important to tell ourselves the bitter truth that those who are averse to any form of religion but are fully sold out to morality and are living by it have what it takes to make it to heaven. Bear in mind that there are different kinds of religious beliefs, and each one of them, as we know, has its doctrines, which are the do's and don'ts, and these all serve as a means to an end and not an end in themselves. The two major religions known and recognized by us as a people, that is, the prominent ones, are Christianity and Islam. And this is not to say that the traditional religion has no place in our society. These two major religions, as we know, serve as a channel that takes us to heaven, but the truth that we have often ignored is that the God that all the religions point to, whether Christianity, Islam, or the traditional religion, is love, and where love is missing, God is missing. And without God, Satan is in charge because nature abhors vacuum. Nigeria, as the most populous black nation in the world and the largest democracy and economy in Africa, is also known for a very large population of worshippers. But surprisingly, this position that the country occupies, especially about the large population of worshippers, has not translated into what ordinarily should be the major characteristics of the true acts of worship, which include peace, prosperity, and progress. The most important thing that is missing in the world, despite all the mundane things of life that people are chasing after, is the fear of God, which on the other hand is wisdom and the departure from evil. The pertinent question to ask is whether all the politicians, I mean people whose career is politics and who occupy the leadership positions in our country, belong to one religion or the other. And if that question is not encompassing, permit me to ask if they know God at all. Nigeria, with all the blessings of God, both in natural and in the human resources, are lacking in what is needed to sustain the blessings and make them accessible by the citizens. It is important and instructive to do the needful. Begin to observe your life more and try to awaken the observer in you, the high self. Thinkers from Plato to Freud have talked about the three selves we have within us. I call them the high self, the conscious self, and the basic self. The conscious self is the personality, the basic self is the child. When the conscious self decides to go on a diet, the basic self eats chocolate cake. The high self is the God within us, the part that is eternal and divine. It is always there, but we need to activate it. Listen to the slow, still voice we'll call intuition, Ariana Uffington. The problems we are confronted with as a nation that we see and believe to be intractable are so only because we have failed to give a place in our heart, lives, businesses, and our nations to God. There is no problem that can be bigger than God, but when man chooses to play God, God brings him down and places his problems above him, to become to him as an insurmountable mountain. It is time and expedient that Nigerians place the politicians who ordinarily should be their servants, but who have arrogated power to themselves to become lords in their proper positions. Unfortunately, it does not matter how God-fearing a politician is. The moment he gets elected into an office, the spirit of the office overtakes him and makes him become like them. And with a popular song, "If you cannot win them, you join them," coming out of his lips. In the parlance of the political elite in Nigeria, the belief is that the minority have their say, while the majority have their way. How impactful are churches and mosques on the behavior and attitudes of politicians is a question that needs to be answered. To a perceptive Nigerian, one would say that our politicians and leaders are nothing other than a true reflection of our churches and our mosques. A minister of God or an Islamic cleric will tell you that money is the fuel of the gospel. To them, and unfortunately, the sources from where they come are inconsequential. And this accounts for the high level of moral decadence that perverts our society. This is not limited to Nigeria, the same applies to America and other advanced countries, especially those of them that are capitalist. In settings where there is the fear of God and morality is sacrosanct, you don't need a Supreme Court or any other court of competent jurisdiction to show a public office holder whose integrity is on the line a way out. The case of the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the Chicago University certificate forgery saga is one of the greatest sources of embarrassment that Nigeria has ever been faced with. This is to say the least is unprecedented and unfortunate. Does a man or leader with a conscience need anyone or the Supreme Court to tell him the right thing to do? This is the height of moral decadence and a reflection of a complete lack of the fear of God in the lives of people and nations. Furthermore, the Northerners, rather than being a positive addition because of their population, which to them is the only hard currency they have to trade with in Nigeria, are in every sense of the word retrogressive and not different from parasite. The mindset of an average northern politician is blurry and tainted by selfishness and ego, and this accounts for why even when the North has produced more than any other region, both the military head of state and the civilian president, they still remain the most backward and vulnerable in the country called Nigeria. When the northern APC governors during the regime of the former president Muhammadu Buhari unanimously agreed that power should go to the south, one would have thought that the gesture was done in good faith and for the progress of the country. It is now crystal clear that they only did that in support of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's ambition, having known him to be the worst candidate from the south, especially when compared with one of the contenders in the person of Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the immediate past vice president of Nigeria. From their political calculations, supporting Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man with questionable character and whose educational qualification problems and controversy they knew about was like setting up for the Southerners and Nigeria a time bomb. It is therefore not surprising why people like the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasiru El-Rufai, the former governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Ganduje, and the former governor of Plateau State, Simon Bakola Long, all have a place in Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration despite their failures as governors in their respective states. The Nigerian leadership position is now a matter of turn by turn, with the important consideration for capacity, competency, and character thrown into the dustbin. It is with dismay and pain that I watched a documentary where Americans were discussing Nigeria, especially President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's predicament regarding the Chicago State University forged certificate and other criminal involvement. While in the United States of America, I was so shocked to hear them talk about his conviction regarding drugs, where he had to forfeit $460,000 for him not to go to jail, as well as the plan by the FBI to release in secessions classified documents that are not good for the sight and for hearing. This is the level of lack of honor and integrity that our dear country Nigeria has descended to.
What it's starting to show is that Bola Tinubu has used many aliases along his career. He basically put pressure on Chicago State University not to release the transcriptions of anything to do with him, because they show that he used different names, that he used several different social security numbers in the United States, some of which were clearly borrowed or fraudulent. He clearly forged a number of documents. He borrowed another person's identity to file studies which were required educationally. So he's done a number of things, but he particularly was prosecuted in Chicago in the 1990s for narcotics trafficking. And he basically pleaded no contest to that and escaped with a forfeiture of $460,000 rather than go to prison. So there's a lot which is coming out about him. So the the appeal against the election outcome after being rejected by the election court is now getting ready to go to the Supreme Court of Nigeria. That's going to be accompanied by all of this other information about Tinubu's forgeries, if Bola Tinubu is in fact his name, but he's lied on about literally every aspect of his life. So it gets to be a very interesting situation. It's to the point now where if the Supreme Court does not overturn this African correspondents who've come up to meet me, is that there will be consequences such as a move to impeach President Tinubu, starting either in the Senate or in the House of Representatives in Nigeria. But certainly there's cooperation among House and Senate people, politicians there, to start not only an impeachment of the president to overturn the election, but also to start censuring or impeaching the Supreme Court if it fails to do its duty, and also, of course, to start prosecuting officials within INEC, the Independent National Election Commission.
With all these being said, wisdom demands that the Supreme Court do the needful, and as a matter of moral obligation and responsibility, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should please resign from his position as president. On a final note, the clergy, the Muslim clerics, the politicians, and Nigerians as a people are to blame for where we are today as a country among the Committee of Nations. Finally, let this be told, and without fear of contradictions, that the greatest mistake the Nigerians made was to allow the continuation of the reign of the All Progressive Congress Party in Nigeria after the evil that President Muhammadu Buhari perpetrated during his 8-year term. This only portrays Nigerians as gullible, bookish, and not educated. It is not too late to make amends, for there is always room for a U-turn. It does not matter how long one has gone on the wrong road. Turning back is imperative, except if one is ready to end up in the wrong destination. Nothing good, I repeat, nothing good awaits Nigerians other than sufferings and groanings if the All Progressive Congress Party, under the watch of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is allowed to continue for another 6 months. For the Northerners, your sufferings have just started, and you are bound to remain the most vulnerable if your choice is to continue doing things the same way and expecting a different result. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Thomas Jefferson. This is food for thought. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you for watching.